So I got an email this week from Terrance Zdunich saying he was going to be in town this weekend for the first ever shadowcasting of Repo, the genetic opera. So on Saturday I packed up my camera and headed down to the Bloor Cinema, and we watched the shadowcasting, which was really cool. And then afterwards I got to share a few words with Terrance, and I learned of some new developments that's happening with Repo that I think are really cool. So I'll let Terrance tell you all about it. Here we are tonight at Toronto, Canada, January 3rd, 2009, a couple days into the new year, and some more Repo history. The first shadowcast of Repo, the genetic opera. So watching that tonight, how was that?
Great, Robert, did I not do that already tonight?
Well, you know, I'm not sure how to answer that. I witnessed tonight the very first shadowcasting of Repo. And I probably shouldn't be here. And what I mean by that is, it was very last minute. I have a million things to do, including preparing for a third Repo road tour, which is happening in literally a couple of weeks, where I'll be gone for almost 2 weeks nonstop, a new city every night. So I shouldn't have done it because I don't have time. I shouldn't have come out here tonight because couldn't necessarily afford it. But when I heard that this was happening, that a group of people who live in Toronto and elsewhere, actually, people flew in from the States and elsewhere to be a part of this. And I saw on our Repo message boards the schematics of what people were planning for tonight, which included how they were going to pull off gore effects. Pages and pages deep of this on the Repo message boards. I kind of felt like, you know what, if I do not find a way to make it out here tonight, I will regret it. And even if it was horrible, I was kind of like, even if tonight is a beautiful mess, you know, people stumbling over, like lights not working when they need to work, all that stuff that I fully kind of expected, it still would be worth seeing because, well, one, it could be the only time this ever happens. Even though I don't think that's going to be the case. I think there's going to be many of these. In fact, I've already heard Phoenix, Arizona is doing it next, and I just felt like I need to be there. I need to sit in the audience, and I was even kind of romanticizing the idea that I could sneak in, incognito, tell no one, watch it, and just observe it as an audience member. That didn't happen. But I did watch the whole thing, and there were moments of brutal awkwardness where stuff wasn't working. But largely, for our 98-minute movie, largely every moment that was shadowcast, that I would say is probably, I don't know, half of the film they probably covered, was really well done, really imaginative, and in many ways completely not what I expected. There were elements that reminded me very much of what we did on stage at the opera tonight, the big ensemble number that sort of concludes what on stage was Act 1. In the movie, it's sort of like the transition into the second half of the film. It's an ensemble number that involves all the main characters grouping up. And they performed that, they shadowcasted that tonight, and their staging was very similar to what we did on stage. They never saw it, but...
It's almost like the film is like Repo, the genetic opera. It's almost going full circle.
It's coming full circle. But they also did things that I never would have imagined, like a dancing, singing Dead Marnie. And honestly, some of those moments that were not what you would naturally do on a stage play with something like Repo, I think were the most effective tonight. And we talked about this. There were people in many ways belittling some of the shortcomings of parts of the film. In a very vocal way, you know, yelling out like, you know, what's that doing in the shot? And on the one hand, I could be sort of offended as an artist, as a writer, like to say, well, you know, that's me up there. I'm vulnerable. Like, don't point out don't point out the gut or the receding hairline or the, you know, or the use of the word, you know, whatever it is that our tics are. Tonight, however, that was done, as well as a lot of love and praise. There were moments where it was outright ridicule, as a group, as a collective. But there was something so warm, organic, and everyone was there because they loved the film, that even their ridicule was based in love. So to watch it, to sit there, to watch someone take on the grave robber role while literally behind him, a few feet behind him on the screen, on the movie screen, was me, projected huge. And here's this young man who put on white face and obviously has been studying not only the soundtrack, but my movements as the character. And so I don't think it gets any better than that. I think as an artist, who gets to experience this? Very few people. I mean, even the likes of Richard O'Brien, you know, it's like, I love Rocky Horror. And I'm sure on some level, although I don't know him, I'm sure on some level, he loves the fact that people are literally paying homage and probably reading more into his work than he ever did. And years after the fact, when he probably wishes he could move on, that's still there. But that happened so slowly. It took years before Rocky Horror had that kind of thing. And here we are, we're not even on DVD yet. We've probably played in a total of maybe 50 movie theaters. That's nothing. Globally, 50 movie theaters.
We'll open on 2,000 screens.
We'll open on 3,000 screens. And so the fact that we've played a maximum of 50 some odd theaters, that just shows the level of dedication these fans have. And to be there, to sit as one of them, I said it tonight, I feel like it is my film in many ways. It's certainly part of my creation, something that I put a lot of time and energy into. And I'll always feel as part of me as such. But at the same time, I finished it. You know, I finished it, and my job this last year is not necessarily to make the art, but to nurture the art, to try to find an audience for the art, to be there, to champion the art. But it's framed, it's done. There's no more changing of the film. Repo exists the way it's going to exist forever. So to come in tonight and watch other people taking over the creative process, where my job is now more managerial, it's amazing. I feel like it's not mine anymore. I know there's a quote, and I'm drawing a blank right now. There's some quote that someone much wiser than myself said, and it was something to the effect of, art is not really alive until someone else has imitated it. And I watched tonight a group of individuals basically imitate the entire film. And like I said, it's not even on DVD yet where people can study it. So they're literally watching it in a theater, repeatedly, taking notes. Because even if they study the soundtrack, it only represents maybe a third of the whole film. And not just them, by the way. I was sitting maybe 10 rows from the front, and the front 10 rows were obviously involved with the Shadowcast. They knew everything. They were avid Repo fans. But the whole world behind me, that's an 800-seat theater or something, were people who knew it but didn't know it. And I could hear them singing along and half doing it because they weren't as confident yet. They hadn't bothered to rehearse till 4 in the morning, multiple nights in a row, to perfect how to sing 21st Century Cure. But then yet behind me, a few rows back, someone who may not even realize that the creator of that song, the voice of that song, as Grave Robber, is sitting there hearing him half sing it. It's badass. It's fucking badass. I'm at a loss for words, even though I've been rambling on for a bit.
Speaking of the music, there's an interesting development I've learned tonight about the Academy Awards.
Yes.
You guys have submitted 3 songs to the...
We are, 3 of Repo's songs are eligible for Academy Award nomination. And that may not sound very significant on face value, but it really is. For a couple of reasons. One, the submission process is very difficult. And when we first contacted the Academy, we were told outright that Repo would not be eligible for anything because it existed as a stage play before. And typically, a musical that already exists, like, I don't know, a Evita, let's say. They made a movie of Evita. They specifically wrote a new song for Evita that didn't exist in the stage play just so they could be eligible for Academy Awards. So Repo's in a tricky situation because it was a stage play, but it was a stage play that nobody saw. So they're basically taking our word for what is new, what was written for the film, versus what was written explicitly for the stage. And we're not trying to pull a fast one on anyone. We largely changed things for the movie, and we did that in a big way because Repo wasn't a big success as a stage play. We had the freedom to go, what would make the best movie? And so as such, we were throwing out songs that were too theatrical and writing songs that we wanted to be more filmic. And moreover, we were changing pieces that we're changing them so dramatically that they barely resembled the source material. So to be eligible, we had to present affidavits, we had to present programs of old stage plays, we had to present sheet music of how the song had changed. For example, the 3 songs that are eligible are Zydrate Anatomy, Chromagia, and Chase the Morning. Chase the Morning as a title existed. There was a song written for the stage play back in 2002 called Chase the Morning. And it's even available on iTunes and whatnot. If you listen to that song versus what is in the movie, it has the same title, but pretty much nothing else is the same. Melodically, it's different. Lyrically, it's different. Everything. It's a different song. It has the same title, but it's a different song. So we had to document that in a way that was explicit to the board that reviews the Academy Award submissions. So that was one hoop. The second hoop was, or the second thing that makes it significant, I should say, is that there's only 49 songs in total, and Repo are 3 of them, that are eligible for the Academy Award nomination. And 11 of those are from High School Musical. A song that's eligible for Best Original Song Written for a Movie, only a maximum of 2 nominations can come from any submission. So you can narrow down that 11 songs from High School Musical to say it's a maximum of 2. And Repo is a maximum of 2 as well. So it's something like a 3 and I want to say like 40 shot as a nomination. It's a long shot. Movies like music by Randy Newman and Amy Mann is typically what gets nominated, not a gothic horror, punk, violent rock opera about violent organ repossessions. But that said, those sort of movies don't exist either, and yet here we are. If we were to be nominated, what that would mean is whatever song or songs were nominated would be performed live on stage and at the Academy Awards in front of millions of people. And that would be the kind of advertising for our project that money hasn't been able to buy yet, because there hasn't been money.
And maybe it would get a wide release afterwards.
That's certainly a possibility. I think one of the problems Repo is up against, that a lot of films aren't, independent films are, but not mainstream films, is there's only 12 prints of the film struck in existence, which means that Repo can only play in a maximum of 12 theaters at any given time. To put it in perspective, a film like Rocky Horror, there were 500 prints struck, and that's low. That's low. A movie like Dark Knight, you mentioned earlier, is something like 3,000 prints, and that may just be North America. That may not even be the globe. So there's literally thousands and thousands of versions of the movie on film that can play simultaneously around the world. Because there's only 12 versions of Repo, that's a limit. We can only reach a maximum type of audience under those circumstances. Now, because Repo is a type of film that, like Tonight in Toronto, is very audience participatory, I believe it can play theatrically like Rocky Horror for years after it's released on DVD. And we're coming out on DVD at the end of the month, January 20th. Our DVD and our Blu-ray are out there for the world. But because watching it at home is a different experience than watching it in an audience full of people, especially a Shadowcast type audience, that I think people are going to want to see it as a community, want to see it with their group of friends, and they're going to want to make new friends when they go out to watch something like Repo. So my hope is that let's say we're fortunate enough to get an Academy Award nomination, let alone a win. Let's just say an Academy Award nomination. Perhaps that would encourage the studio to say, you know what, let's make another 50 prints. Let's make 50 more prints of the film, and it can exist in a wider span than 12. I mean, think about it. Most cities have 12 theaters playing Dark Knight or Saw. There's 12 total of Repo. And even with that, we've managed to generate a huge buzz. I mean, we've been playing in Toronto now for, 20 performances or something? We started out with 0.
Almost all of them sold out.
Almost every single one is sold out, including tonight. And that's with zero advertising. There's not a billboard. There's not a commercial on. There's not radio spots.
Just grassroots movement.
Grassroots. It literally is. Once we find out, which sometimes is too late. And when I say we, I mean the creative elements of Repo. We post it on our website. We post it on our website, and there are fans that are so rabid about what we're doing that they find that post almost instantaneously. And then they contact people in their local area. Darren Bousman and I just literally this week announced the dates and cities for Road Tour 3, which are running from the 13th of January to the 24th. 2 days after we announced it, we wandered in, and one of the stops is Los Angeles. I should preface that, which is where I'm from. The last stop is Los Angeles, where Repo began, and which is where we feel like we should end the tour.
All right, guys.
2 days after we announced it, Darren Bousman and I, the director, wandered into one of our favorite haunts. It's basically a horror type store where they sell T-shirts and DVDs and such. And we walked in, and there were flyers, a stack of flyers that said Repo Road Tour 3, January 24th. We're going to be playing in Los Angeles, and they have the theater dates, which means. And we asked the owner, "Did you make these?" He said, "No." So literally, a fan found out almost immediately after we posted it, created their own flyer, made multiple copies, and stuck it in at least one venue in Los Angeles, which leads me to believe it's probably in hundreds of venues. And not just in Los Angeles, but everywhere. And we just happened to stumble upon it. And what are the odds of that? So, and that's completely grassroots. We didn't instigate that, we didn't finance it, and it happened. And it's happening, even to this day. So as a creator, I don't know, to have the fans really not only embracing and nurturing the work, but literally taking it, feeling it imperative. They're going, you know what, we understand it's not being embraced by the studio, so it's our job. It's our imperative to go out and get this movie seen because they love it and they care and they feel like they're part of the team, and they are. So to walk in a random location 2 days after we announced it and see professionally made flyers that we had nothing to do with, nor did our distributors, nor did our producers, utterly fan-driven, motivated, financed, and executed, is huge. It doesn't get better than that, isn't it?
So what's the future? What's the future right now for Repo then? Because you said you started in LA, obviously as a stage play. It's gone full circle, and your last road tour date will be in LA. Then what?
Well, I don't know. If you had asked me a month ago what Repo would be doing, I probably wouldn't have been able to tell you it was going to be a...
Fucking kidding me. Sorry guys, it's after 2:45. Like, we legally can't have any liquor on the tables anymore. So
Oh, okay.
that's all.
Okay. Repo breaks the law. So the answer is I don't know. It's in the fans' hands now. We're going to do this road tour. It's going to end on the 24th. We've already been contacted about doing something in the UK and in Australia. So I suspect that it's going to continue on the path that it is. And now that the fans in many ways own it, I think it's completely up to them. And so now I get to just kind of watch and hopefully continue to be pleasantly surprised about what's going to happen with the project.
Cool. Thanks, Terrance.
Thank you, sir.